Did you know that the annual emission of greenhouse gases keeps increasing year after year?
It is currently 60% of humanity's overall ecological footprint and its rapidly growing component.
Humanity's carbon footprint has increased 11-fold since 1961.
It warrants immediate action, no delays, and without compromise.
Heather, you touched on how dangerous things are as they fly through the air. Well, this huge sign, obviously much bigger than myself.
The Yangtze River reported its first flood peak this year on Friday.
Worst drought to hit South Africa since 1982. Millions are facing water shortages.
Every day, every hour, every second, we engage in the unending accumulation of carbon footprints in this world.
Carbon footprint is basically all of the emissions of carbon dioxide and other compounds emitted due to the consumption of fossil fuels per particular group or person. Today, the term carbon footprint is often used as a shorthand for the amount of carbon dioxide.
Your carbon footprint is the sum of all emissions of carbon dioxide, which was induced by your activities in a given time frame. Usually, a carbon footprint is calculated for the time period of a year. Everyone's carbon footprint is different depending on their location, habits, and personal choice. Each of us contributes to the greenhouse gas emissions, either by the way we travel, the food we eat, the amount of electricity we consume, and many more.
For example, when you drive a car and burn fuel, it generates certain amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. When you heat or cool your house, it also generates carbon dioxide, assuming that electricity is coming from coal power plants. And similarly, when you eat food, it also generates some quantities of carbon dioxide as the food gets processed.
The carbon component of the ecological footprint, which we call the carbon footprint, takes a slightly different approach. Our carbon footprint measurement translates the amount of carbon dioxide emissions into the amount of productive land and sea area required to sequester those carbon dioxide emissions. This tells us the demand of the planet that results from burning fuels. Measuring it in this way enables us to address the climate change challenge in a holistic way that does not simply shift the burden from one natural system to another.
When it comes to the factors which compose of our total carbon emission, we have industrialization. Since the Industrial Revolution began during the middle of the 20th century, carbon dioxide has continued to rise unchecked and at alarming rates. Agriculture. Most agricultural processes within developed and developing nations are still being carried out commercially, with the result that mass production of livestock has led to large levels of methane gas being released into the atmosphere. Human action and inaction. Ultimately, the way humankind has become accustomed to doing things every day, keeping pace with the need to do things more quickly and with more convenience, has contributed towards the exponential increase in carbon footprints on an annual basis. Waste. No matter which process or activity is being carried out, the waste from this is excessive. It is also having a harmful impact on the Earth's natural resources, flora, fauna, and the oceans, for example.
And for the most harmful contributors to the carbon footprint are the many large producing companies that are influenced by investor contributors and stakeholdings from the government institutions. In the last 25 to 30 years, at least half of the estimated emissions have come from these oil and coal burning companies alone. In some places, mandated by governments to do so, they are also holding large reserves of fossil fuels. If these are burned, the Earth is placed at even greater risk. On the global, governmental scale, the US, China, and India are the largest emitters of human-induced greenhouse gases, while the South Africa is the biggest contributor on the African continent. The argument demanding that developing nations make larger contribution towards the reducing carbon footprint, while the world's least developed nations are give concessions, is an ignorant one.
So why do we need to have as small footprint as possible? First, carbon footprint and the environment. Our increasing carbon footprint is having a profound effects on the environment. Rising temperatures and shifting precipitation patterns are changing the growing patterns of plants and result in indigenous vegetation moving to increasingly cooler climates. Sea levels are rising as the temperatures of our planet increases. Warmer water occupies more space than cooler water.
Rising seas will not only erode shorelines and destroy ecosystems. Coastal cities and towns could be displaced by rising seas.
Secondly, carbon footprint and wildlife. As vegetation shifts climates because of increasing temperature and shifting weather patterns, wildlife that depends on it will become threatened because it is unable to keep up with the rate at which the climate is changing.
According to the Nature Conservancy, 1/4 of the Earth's species will be headed for extinction in 40 years if climate change increases at its current rate.
Furthermore, carbon footprint and human health relationship. Our increased carbon footprint has the capacity to harm our health. Most at risk are women in agricultural work and children. According to the World Health Organization, climate change is projected to increase the percentage of people in Mali suffering from hunger from 34% to at least 64% 40 years from now.
An increase in malnutrition is caused by the result of climate change on food crops, such as drought that interferes with the growing season. Drought also causes diarrheal diseases as access to safe water is compromised.
Vector-borne diseases such as malaria are increasing as the temperature increase allows malarious mosquitoes to survive in countries previously too cool for them.
Lastly, increased air pollution has caused an increase in respiratory problems as asthma and allergies have increased. Finally, carbon footprint and economic losses. The threat posed by our increasing carbon footprint on the country is significant. Climate change will affect local economies. In addition, the increase in ocean temperatures is threatening the survival of coral reefs, a $375 billion per year industry.
Here are some ways to reduce your carbon footprint in this world.
In driving, hybrids may still be out of reach for most drivers, mainly due to its rise, but is a necessary alternative to conventional vehicles which run on petrol or diesel. Also when driving, motorists should avoid heavily congested road networks. How well they drive also makes an impact on reducing their carbon footprint. And instead of driving, the popular and healthy advice is to walk instead of driving. Those who have too far to travel can also use rapid bus transport networks and urban rail networks. Also, less red meat is better. Vegetarians are already off to a good start because of most of their consumptive waste can be recycled easily. However, the greenhouse gas emissions from agricultural produce such as cattle and poultry are substantial. Where there is less demand, surely emissions can be reduced.
To add, we should buy local. Adding to the above remark, buying local, organic produce effectively counter mass-produced agricultural outcomes.
There is a dramatic reduction in the amount of plastic being used to package products, and fuel usage during long road transits is also reduced. Buy green energy. It is quite possible to power your own home with environmentally sustainable alternatives of energy production without compromising your lifestyle and waiting for national grids to be connected via green energy supply sources. For instance, technology is now available for you to install your own solar power panels.
Energy efficiency at home. All the appliances that are not being used must be switched off. All the electrical outlets that are not being used must be also switched off. These simple yet practical lifestyle habits are easily to be adopted.
Learn to recycle and reuse. Vegetable produce can be converted into compost or manure for gardens, even vegetable gardens.
Instead of buying more foods containers, plastic containers sourced from the supermarket can be refashioned as ideal kitchen utensils. Also, where plastic waste is no longer required, seek out recycling depots rather than relying on your supplied garbage disposal units. Avail WFH facility or work from home facility. If you have an option to work from home even for a couple of days in a week, just opt for it. It will reduce the huge carbon dioxide burden in case you are using your own vehicle for commuting. Why not make use of teleconferences and attend these meetings remotely? It may not be possible every time, but even if you are able to skip couple of meetings in a month, that will make a huge difference. Purchase carbon credits. For some companies or private individuals, some emissions are unavoidable. For those, purchasing carbon credits is a worthwhile option. This is done by purchasing these carbon credits from companies who will invest those dollars on their behalf on some renewable energy and energy efficiency projects.
The last and probably the best way to reduce carbon footprint is to plant a tree. One of the best way to give it back to the environment is to plant trees.
Plants absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen that is then used by humans and animals. According to the Urban Forestry Network, a single young tree absorbs 13 pounds of carbon dioxide each year.
So this framework also shows climate change in the greater context, one which unites all of the ecological threats we face today.
Climate change,
deforestation,
overgrazing, fisheries collapse,
food insecurity,
and the rapid extinction of species
are all part of a single arcing problem. Humanity is simply demanding more from the earth that it can provide.
By focusing on the single issue, we can address all of its symptoms rather than solving one problem at the cost of another.